Have you ever noticed something strange? The more you learn, the less certain you seem to become. You spend 20 minutes rewriting an email, double checking details, questioning your conclusions. Meanwhile, someone with half the knowledge walks into the room completely convinced they're right. No hesitation, no doubt, no second guessing, just certainty. And somehow that certainty makes you question yourself even more. It's easy to assume this means something is wrong. That confidence must be evidence of competence, and self doubt must be evidence of weakness. But what if that's backwards? What if the thing you're treating as proof that you're not capable is actually being created by the way your mind works? Because for many intelligent people, imposter syndrome isn't a sign of low ability. It's a side effect of high awareness, a mind that sees more variables, more possibilities, more things that could go wrong. Today, we're looking at 3 reasons intelligence can end up feeding self doubt. And more importantly, how to stop your brain from using its own logic against you. The first reason is something I call the curse of knowledge. Most people imagine intelligence as certainty, but in reality, knowledge often creates the opposite effect. Because every time you learn something new, you also discover everything you don't know. Imagine standing on the edge of a map. When your world is small, the border between the known and unknown is small too. But as your knowledge expands, so does the edge. The more territory you explore, the more unknown territory you can see, which means intelligent people often spend more time face to face with uncertainty, not less. That's why experts are usually more careful with their conclusions than beginners. They know how complicated things actually are. They've seen enough exceptions to stop trusting simple answers. But this creates a problem. Because when something becomes easy for you, you stop noticing the skill involved. You assume everyone can do it. You've been doing it for years. Of course, it feels simple. Reading people, solving problems, connecting ideas, explaining concepts, seeing patterns. The things that are valuable often become invisible to the person who possesses them. You discount your own strengths because they no longer feel impressive. And if they don't feel impressive, you assume they aren't valuable. That's the first trap, not underestimating what you don't know, underestimating what you do. The second reason is connected to something we talked about in the cognitive power video. Your brain is an efficiency machine. Its job is to make things automatic, to recognize patterns quickly, to reduce effort whenever possible. And when you've spent years building expertise in something, your brain starts skipping steps. You see a situation, and somehow you already know where it's heading. You look at a problem, and the answer appears. Not because you're guessing, because your brain has processed thousands of similar patterns before. The problem is that you don't always see the work happening. You only see the result, which creates a strange experience. You arrive at the correct conclusion, but you can't fully explain how you got there. So your brain starts telling a story. Maybe I just got lucky. Maybe I guessed. Maybe anyone could have figured that out. But they didn't. You did. Because hidden underneath that answer was years of accumulated experience, years of pattern recognition, years of observations being quietly stored and connected. The work became invisible, not because it wasn't real, because it became efficient. Yeah, one thing that helps with this is keeping what I call a win journal. Not a journal of achievements, a journal of logic. Every time you solve a difficult problem, make a good decision, notice a pattern, write down why, document the thought process. Because over time, you'll start seeing something important. The results weren't random. There was a system underneath them, a system you've spent years building. The third reason is even more personal, and it's what I call the performance trap. Many intelligent people accidentally build their identity around being the person who knows, the smart one, the capable one, the person with answers. At first, this seems harmless, even helpful, until life inevitably presents something you don't know. A difficult question, a new skill, a situation you've never encountered before, and suddenly it feels threatening. Not because you can't learn it, because it challenges the identity. If your self-worth is tied to always knowing, then not knowing becomes dangerous. You stop exploring. You stop asking questions. You stop experimenting. Instead of practicing competence, you start performing it. You become more focused on looking knowledgeable than becoming knowledgeable, and the irony is that this creates even more self-doubt. Because deep down, you know you're performing. The solution is subtle, but powerful. Stop building your identity around being smart. Build it around being a learner. There's a huge difference between those two things. I am smart, and I am someone who learns. One requires perfection, the other requires curiosity. One fears mistakes, the other expects them. One is fragile, the other grows stronger every time it's challenged. So, how do you actually reduce imposter syndrome? Not temporarily, permanently. The answer isn't more confidence, it's more exposure. Specifically, exposure to being a beginner. Most people spend their lives avoiding situations where they might look inexperienced, but that's exactly what keeps the fear alive. You need what I call safe fail arenas, low stakes environments where you're allowed to be bad, allowed to be confused, allowed to ask questions. Maybe it's learning a language, taking an art class, trying a new sport, learning an instrument, anything where nobody expects you to be good. Why does this work? Because it retrains your nervous system. You start experiencing something important. Nothing terrible happens when you don't have the answer. The world keeps turning. People don't reject you. Your value doesn't disappear. You survive uncertainty. And every time you survive it, the fear loses strength. Here's the truth. Imposter syndrome isn't necessarily a flaw, and it isn't always evidence that you're unqualified. Sometimes it's a side effect of seeing the world with enough nuance to realize it's complicated. It's what happens when you're aware of variables other people haven't considered. When you recognize uncertainty instead of pretending it doesn't exist. When your standards are high enough that you can see the distance between where you are and where you want to be. The problem isn't the awareness. The problem is the interpretation. You've been treating that awareness like evidence that something is wrong, when it may actually be evidence that you're paying attention. So let me ask you something. When self-doubt shows up for you, does it come from a fear of being found out? Or does it come from comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your experience. You already have the hardware. Stop letting the software convince you it's a glitch, and I'll see you in the next video.